Peter, do you want to start? So 10 minutes. I was told it was 15, so we're going to keep it going here. All right. Okay. I'm excited because something has happened here in this community and in this state. And this gathering, grassroots effort is exciting to see. You don't see this everywhere. A very wise businessman told me recently, he said, help that which wants to happen. That's what makes things successful. If you can figure out, not what's my agenda, but what wants to happen, and how can we identify that and help it happen? And I think that's what's going on here. There's a current moving in this community that's exciting, and this is a great step in helping that happen. I'm with a program here representing a small piece of the puzzle. We're talking about family strengthening, and families are complex systems. The part of that puzzle that we really concentrate on is around the couples, the parents, the marriages, and the piece, the way we attack that issue is through a strategy of using assessment. So I want to tell you a little bit about our piece. The Marriage for Keeps program has been using our Prepare Rich tools the last few years, and they've really been excited about the role that's playing in the program, so they invited me to be here to talk a little bit about that. But let me start with a story. 30 years ago in Minnesota, the community was mobilizing around preventative marriage preparation. How do we get these couples the skills, the tools, the knowledge they need before they get married, so that we can prevent some problems? And they were on the cutting edge. 30 years ago, Bill Coffin gave a nice history, and they were bringing in to a setting like this speakers. They would gather couples together and say, okay, tonight we're going to hear from a counselor. They're going to talk about communication. Next week we've got a finance expert coming in to talk about budgeting. Pastor so-and-so will be here to talk about spirituality. They were hitting good, solid topics with very good speakers. And they thought they had really come on to something that was going to be powerful and effective in the community. So they invited a team of researchers from the University of Minnesota to come in and look at the outcomes of this. And Dr. David Olson, the founder of Prepare Rich, was part of that team, and he led that team of researchers. And they, as psychologists like to do sometimes, went whole hog on researching this pre and post. They were looking for knowledge gain, behavior change, attitude change. And so here's all these engaged premarital couples listening to this good content. They did pre and post testing, talked to them, recorded them, watched them. Dr. Olson had to come to a meeting like this months later with the results. And he had to say, you know what? There was no knowledge gain. There was no behavior change. And their attitudes actually went down a little bit. They were less likely to say, yeah, we come for counseling or something if we needed it. I mean, talk about water rolling off a duck's back. And the group that was listening to this was obviously shocked, but they said, well, why? What in the world happened? And the team had been trying to get at the core of what was going on. And one of the things they heard a lot of these couples say is, well, this was pretty good stuff, but it didn't really apply to us. The other couples in this room might need that, but we don't need that. She doesn't feel that way about me. So there was a lot of denial. And they asked, what do we do about that? And the team looked at some of the process, and one of the things they noticed is that as they were actually doing the research and assessing these couples, they would get really curious. If you sit two people down, two people who are in love down, and give them a questionnaire, and you start asking them about their families or the way they handle money and the way they communicate, they get really curious about what that other person is saying about them. And it no longer becomes I'm just giving you information. It becomes very personal. Like, what are you telling these people about our relationship? How are you rating me across these domains. And so what Dr. Olson realized is, if I design a questionnaire the right way, we can not only get a lot of great information, but we can break through that barrier of denial and personalize this so that we can grab their attention, capture their curiosity, and motivate them to really make some changes. We use this in a lot of other areas, these approaches. Our ability to solve problems is highly dependent on our ability to accurately define the issues. Okay? So our ability to solve a problem depends on how we define the issue. So when I take my car in every 6 months, Honda sends me a little reminder and says, time for your service or whatever, and I go in, they plug that car into a computer, and they get the readout, what's going on. When I go to my dentist, they take an x-ray. And they say, here's looking good, or there's maybe a little area we got to watch, or there's a cavity. We use assessment as the first step in so many areas of our life to then say, okay, what's the plan? Is there a problem? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? Now, where do we go with that? Social science is caught up with that. It's kind of a well-kept secret. But with Prepare and Rich, an assessment tool like this, couples can go online in several different languages, fill out an online assessment, and a facilitator can get a report that says, here are the strengths and the issues of this couple. Then you sit down with that couple and you begin to share those results with them. Say, hey, here's where you're doing well. Here's some areas where you could use some help. And it breaks through that ambivalence, that denial. There's a lot of couples, and you might be a surprise to you, but they have a very different opinion about the very same relationship. How many husbands would say, hey, I think it's going pretty good. And if he could see the way his wife just rated that marriage across 200 statements, it'd be a little shock to the system. Or vice versa. It happens both ways. So it's a very powerful part of the process. I remember my Uncle Daryl. He's 70 years old now, but he told me a story. He was kind of a wild kid. He started smoking at 15, about the same time he got kicked out of school. But he was a guy who started smoking early, and he smoked for 50 years. And of course, he didn't live in a shell somewhere. He heard smoking's not good for you, okay? And he tried to quit. The doctor would tell him every couple of years that when he went in for an exam, you really need to quit. He couldn't quit. He just could not do it. He was getting a lot of good advice, but he couldn't muster the ability to break that habit. Well, when he was 65, they took a lung x-ray, and they found some dark lesions or spots on that x-ray. The doctor put it up, showed it to Uncle Daryl. He quit smoking that day. He got personal feedback that said, this is you we're talking about now. I'm not just saying good advice. These are your lungs. He made a change. And that's what I'm here to say today to you. You can do a lot of different things in Kansas. You can create lots of different programs and such. But if you want to maximize the impact, I just encourage you to consider taking advantage of what social science can offer and grab the attention of people. So let me tell you just a little bit about how Prepare and Rich works. Couples take the assessment, a report is generated, and then they go meet with a trained facilitator. Now originally, 30 years ago when we started, facilitators were always counselors or clergy. And to this day we've trained 80,000 facilitators in the United States. There's 500 of them already here in Kansas that are working with couples. I've met a few today. They meet with couples and start to give them the feedback, but then they also teach them skills. I kind of feel like it's, you're teeing up the ball, and now how do we follow through and teach them the skills that they need in those areas of growth. So that's really the approach of the program. Facilitators are trained in a one-day training and are taught to give that feedback. What's really exciting to me is what Bill started to say is happening. One of the problems is this is a professional movement. Well, we're also seeing that lay couples and lay people and mentors are starting to champion marriage and teaching that. There's some neat research I just got about 2 weeks ago, and I want to share it with you. Hopefully your eyes won't roll back in your head, but I got to tell you a little bit about one of the things that Prepare and Rich does. We look at a lot of different aspects of relationships: communication, conflict, finance. Across all those categories, couples, both partners respond to the statements, the issues, and then we're able to statistically look and kind of categorize. Is this a vitalized relationship? Is it harmonious? Is it conventional, traditional, or is it conflicted or devitalized? So the fewer strengths you have as a couple, the more likely you are to be conflicted or devitalized. And our longitudinal studies show that you're at a much higher risk of divorce. You know that a conflicted premarital couple, if they choose to get married, 3 years down the road, there's a 56% chance they'll already be divorced or separated. Just 3 years into that marriage. That's powerful. Only 12% if they're a vitalized couple. So these are powerful tools. Well, the reason I need you to understand those types is that in Texas, the last few years, there's a grant that's been going on, and they've been training mentor couples and marriage educators. These are not people who hold professional degrees. They're not counselors or pastors. These are people, community-based, who have an interest in helping out. And they got trained to use this program with their couples. And I was listening to them a couple weeks ago. They started sharing the results, and they said, our favorite story is the mechanic and his wife who mentored a devitalized couple. And in 18 weeks, that couple went from devitalized to vitalized because they sat down together, went through this process, learned skills, and transformed their marriage. This pie chart shows the conflicted couples. And so the pre-test, they collected data on thousands of couples, but this was a sample of 332 couples who were conflicted at the time one, before they got the program. So if you imagine that whole chart was purple, the whole thing's purple. They're all conflicted. They go through 8 sessions with their mentors, learn some skills, take the assessment. Well, the big blue section is vitalized couples. A big chunk of them ended up vitalized at the end of the program. The red is harmonious, the green is conventional. What you're seeing is 74% of the conflicted couples moved out of that range into much healthier ways of functioning. These are real, tangible results achieved with community-based outreach and non-professionals working with couples. That blew me away. That's exciting. Just a couple last points. We realized that with the assessment that the approach is powerful. It's not always realistic that you have a trained facilitator working with every couple. So we developed an over-the-counter version called the Couple Checkup. And you can go to couplecheck.com and take an assessment, get a report, and sit down with your partner and go through those results. And you can do that today. It takes about 25 minutes each to fill it out. Well, there's no training required for that. Any couple can do it. And that's been really fun and flexible to use. Chick-fil-A, a restaurant chain, came to us last year and they said, hey, we want to give away checkups for a month in several different communities. See if we can make an impact. And so in South Florida, for a month, 11 Chick-fil-A stores gave a voucher code for a checkup to every couple, every customer who went through the store. Not everybody took them up on it, but about 3,000 people in this one community took the checkup. And what was amazing, we were reaching the right people. 45% of those couples who took it were conflicted or devitalized. Their marriages were in trouble. Okay. Then they had a date night campaign. So for 5 weeks, on Monday nights, they were invited back to the store, and they were given a little menu, we called it. And one menu was on communication, another menu was on personality. So they'd sit down, they'd have their couple checkup report, and then they'd talk about, hey, how are we communicating? What could we do better? What do you like about how we communicate? And they would just have a little private discussion there. Chick-fil-A had set out some tablecloths and a little flour, and it was really neat. And these couples were coming back each week. We did a follow-up on that about 3 months later. We got significant improvements in a whole range of relationship areas. Couples improved in their communication, the way they rated their finances, conflict, sex and affection, their flexibility in their roles, and then overall satisfaction. So, I mean, a creative, significant kind of community outreach. So, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that Marriage for Keeps has been using Prepare and Rich and wants to talk creatively about how we can do more in Kansas. Together, I want to see if we can help that which wants to happen. So we stand ready to partner with you and try and be a resource and speak into the process. So thank you for having me.